Happy New Year. We are coming to you live right after the Sugar Bowl where Notre Dame advances, beats Georgia. SEC has one team left in Texas, two Big Ten teams in Penn State and Ohio State, and then Notre Dame, the independent. So all teams with a bye lost, which means all the conference champions lost. And the seeds 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all that's left in the college football playoff. Welcome Trevor in. Thanks for joining us. He's in the middle of Nebraska. So he'll just be on sound tonight. But let's just start with yesterday, or really it had been Tuesday night, the Fiesta Bowl with Penn State beating Boise State in a game that started off, which was a theme in this, Trev, and I want to get your thoughts on this. It was the team that had played definitely started faster in every game, except for the one that just got over today. Rust was apparent. I really believe that. Do you think it was rust, or was it just the teams were definitely seated wrong?
Well, we know the seeding's a little bit of a work in progress. I think for Penn State, Boise State, it's two things. Obviously, it's a personnel matchup problem because Penn State's obviously got better players. But I think it's a lot like the NFL too, where and these kids are younger than NFL players. Sometimes you get that bye week in the NFL and that's why a lot of coaches struggle with the final week of the regular season, even if their seeding's locked up in the NFL. For example, they still struggle with playing players. Do they play a quarter, a half, give them a few series just to keep that rust off? So I don't think it's uncommon to see it at the college level since these guys are a lot younger, obviously.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I do think, the Penn State game was it's just a matchup. I mean, Penn State's just better than Boise. No question about that. Anything really you want to talk about? Genty got 100 yards, but he took 30-some carries. Penn State, to me, now I'll be honest, I didn't watch a lot of Penn State going into the season or going into the playoffs. They look pretty good to me. I understand they lost the big games, lost the Big Ten championship game. They look really good to me. Am I wrong in that? They can win again.
Yeah, I think so, especially with the matchup they've got. I've just looked to see what that line is. It's about 1.5. So obviously Vegas thinks it's going to be a close game. That's kind of what my guess was. So no, Penn State's got a lot of NFL players. Drew Aller's obviously coming back. He would have been a first-round pick this year, just given his measurables. Self up to the third quarterback take and maybe even the second, depending on some of his interviews and the combine went. But they've got good players everywhere. Boise State it was a good effort by Boise State, but the 3 turnovers really killed them.
Yeah, the 2 fumbles by Genty. And I do think it's rust. Everybody says you want to get healthy, and he said he felt healthier. But there is just the routine, and then just college is a little different than the NFL, where you do football all day, every day. For the first time since the season really started, since about December 15th to 20th, depending on every school's calendar is a little different, but they haven't had school. And then they've been traveling. Some of them got to go home for Christmas for a few days. So you're doing football, then you're worried about your family and trying to get home. And, a lot of these players are not even remotely close to being at home. You're playing, you play at Boise, but you're from Texas, so it's not just super easy to get home. So you get on a flight, you go there for a couple days, you go back. I've been on flights the last, 2 times in the last week or so. It just makes you tired. It's just different. You're not used to it. It's a long day, no matter what it is. And, then you got to focus in on a football game, but you don't have, you still have your food, your workouts, your practice, your time, but you don't have class, so you do have just some extra time, but yet the regular student body's not there, so your normal friend, you have your football friends, but you have friends outside of football that you hang out with and do stuff. They're all at home. They're not in school right now. And so just life's different right now for all these players. And then just being in this playoff where normally Notre Dame and Georgia would have spent the last week in New Orleans doing a whole bunch of stuff, and then this would have been it no matter what. But the difference in the playoff, these guys are only getting there a day or two before the game, and then they're flying home right away after, because obviously Notre Dame, they got to get home and they got to play a week from today. Now, Georgia's season's over, so if they decide to not go home till tomorrow morning, that's not the end of the world. But Notre Dame's getting on a flight right now. They are cleaning up, going through interviews right now. It's going to be a little bit, but by 10 o'clock, they're going to be at the airport, and they're going to be home by midnight. And they got to get ready to go. And it's regular game week. So I expect actually Penn State to be, or Notre Dame to be full go, ready to go right away, because they're on a regular schedule now. And it's a little bit closer to normal for all these teams, because it was, Penn State has a couple extra days, but still they're going to go just a day, maybe 2 days before. The only one that's different is the national championship game, where I think everybody's going several days before. But all the others are just a day or two before, like a regular road game.
Yeah, the travel is definitely a little bit different compared to your normal bowl games, like you said, where you'd get there a week before and do all the activities. Right now, these teams got to arrive with the assumption that, hey, we're going to win. And as you mentioned, get right back on the plane, get home, and start prepping like a normal week, just like any other you would during the regular season. So, yeah, that's going to be a little bit different. The kids are going to have to get used to it. That's just the way this is going to be. And I think we'll see over the years, obviously, the teams that make it, year in and year out, the Blue Bloods, they'll probably do a much better job with it. These teams that don't get in very often, like the Boise States, SMU's, schools like that, are probably gonna struggle for quite a while, I would imagine, given the format.
Yeah, the four teams that are left are about as blue as they get in Blue Bloods. It's Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Texas. That's 5 of the top 10 or 4 of the top 10 programs in the country.
Yeah, so it's no surprise that any of them are here. I think when you look down at the bottom half of the bracket, which I've got pulled up now, outside of Georgia, we kind of figured it would be Penn State versus Georgia or Notre Dame, and that's what it ended up being. Yeah. The top half of the bracket, which we can get in those games too. There, the Texas-Arizona State game. I don't know if you want to go that next, but that ended up being just an all-timer right there, where early it looked like Texas was going to run away with it, and then everything else happened. But that was one hell of a game.
Yeah, that was by far and away the best game. I mean, even right or wrong, this game wasn't super dramatic. Georgia had a chance, but they never threatened to win that game. Notre Dame had that field goal, touchdown, kick return, all within, I think they said, like 38 seconds of game time. Now halftime happened there, but 38 seconds is what won that football game or lost that football game, depending on what side you were on. And then other than that, it was just run the ball, don't make a mistake, kick a couple field goals, keep them at bay. Georgia only had one drive that they looked good on offense. Notre Dame's defense is really good. Texas, obviously, as we talked about, started awesome, up really big, and then they just, I don't know, they looked like they just kind of took their feet off the gas and just tried to hang on, and Arizona State made a couple plays, and Scatabo was super frustrated right away, but then he had the game of his life, game of anybody's life, throwing for a touchdown, big-time catches, running all over people, running for touchdowns, winning an MVP on a losing team. That's unbelievable. I mean, that's unheard of. But that's how big of an impact he had on that football game. And if I'm Arizona State, I am absolutely just frustrated with myself. A lot of people are talking about that targeting call, and I think it was a wrong. I don't know what target. That's the problem. No one knows what targeting is now. If that's not targeting, then some of the times I've seen Iowa State guys kicked out, or the Simmons guy that wasn't able to play in the first half of that game, which impacted it because he made a huge impact in the second half. That when he hit Rocco Beck in the Big 12 championship game, that wasn't as bad as that hit that at the end of the game, towards the end of the game there, the Texas guy. So I don't know what targeting is. You don't know if Arizona State goes down and scores and wins, but it takes away the chance. But they all out blitzed and went on a cover zero, and that safety played absolutely awful on that 4th and 13. That was just pitch and catch. That was just way too easy on 4th and 13 for a touchdown. I know Arizona State's defensive coordinator wants that call back.
Yeah, most definitely. And like you said, Scadaboo getting the MVP, I think it was rightfully deserved. I didn't think anybody on Texas really had earned the offensive player of the game or any of that type of stuff. Quinn Ewers, his stats might look all right, but he's a liability for them. He's going to be the reason they don't win this thing, in my opinion. Yep. And we'll get into the other games coming up here next. But no, that was a great comeback by Arizona State. And yeah, they have to be kicking themselves for that hit. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably the definition of a targeting hit. I think it gets overcalled in college to begin with. And a lot of people are saying today, which I agree with, the refs didn't want to get involved and have the game come down to a call. So they just wanted to stay out of it. I think that's a classic case of that happening.
Yeah, they were scared to make the call. And that's unfortunate because that's your job. And they made it about themselves by not making the call. So it's the same. It's bad no matter what. They were in a no-win situation. It's Texas has I watched all the games. I think Texas is the best team left. But you are 100%. Quinn Ewers is going to be the reason they don't win the national championship. And I don't know if he's going to go to the NFL or the portal, but he is not going to come back to Texas, I don't think, because I think they know that he just makes some bonehead throws, like that interception that he did throw that let Arizona State back in the game. You don't have to make that throw. He just laid it up there for anybody to go get, and the Arizona State guy went and got it. They have the best team, but they don't have the best quarterback. And in college football, you got to have a great quarterback.
I'll go with Ohio State as the best team. If Ohio State's offensive line can handle Texas' D-line, I think it's going to be maybe a rout. I don't trust Texas's Sarkisian in big games. He had players tweeting.
I don't trust Ryan Day in big games either.
Well, we'll see. I mean, Ohio State's back on the run now, but Texas had players at halftime putting up Instagram posts about Scadaboo. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that they've got going on. So, no, I think Ohio State's clearly proved that they could have let that Michigan game either derail them or springboard them, and they're springboarded now. We're seeing where all that talent's coming through. So we can get in that game. But no, the Arizona State, Texas, that ended up being an awesome game. And yeah, Arizona State's got to be kicking themselves on a couple things, but then their quarterback too, Arizona State, really impressed me. He'll be back next year. He's going to be an NFL player. For Quinn Ewers, there are some rumors going around that Notre Dame could be his next destination next season.
And he's really good. I mean, I'm not saying he's not, but he just makes some bonehead plays where he doesn't have to when he has just talent everywhere. And he puts the ball in harm's way too much for them to win it. And you probably are right. Ohio State's the best team, but I cannot get over them losing to Michigan. And just like I don't think Notre Dame can win it because I don't know how you lose to Northern Illinois. Texas' only losses are to Georgia, who's really, really good. Now, they had some other games that weren't great, but that's just now Ohio State by far and away. Let's go ahead and just move on to the Rose Bowl. Ohio State by far and away has looked the best in this tournament. They absolutely destroyed Tennessee. Of all the teams that looked like they didn't belong in this tournament, Oregon was the one that looked the worst. I don't know what Dan Lanning did. Now, I think some of it, Ohio State had reason for that. They're really, really good, and they made Oregon look really, really bad. But whatever Dan Lanning and Oregon staff did to get them ready for that game was wrong. And they were down 31-0. And they looked like they had no idea what was happening. They looked slow. I don't know. It was not a good representation of the number 1 seed. Now, they got completely hosed by having to play Ohio State. That's a whole different argument. But they didn't look like they belonged no matter who they were playing. I think they would have I think they would have lost to any of the other 11 teams in that tournament. They played that bad.
They came out flat. Dylan Gabriel really hurt himself in the draft. I mean, he was already expected to be a late round pick or undrafted free agent, so he'll probably stay there. Maybe he didn't hurt himself, but he certainly didn't help. He was throwing the ball just all over the place in the game. The defensive backs of Oregon stood no chance against those Ohio State receivers, which the Ohio State receivers have been showing off. That is the strength of their team, the receivers and their D-backs. We'll see if that continues in the next one. But, yeah, Oregon, they just came out they came out really flat. And, yeah, I don't know what – they didn't really adjust as far as – Ohio State had the revenge factor and then maybe the layoff. But, yeah, that game was disappointing for sure.
Yeah, this tournament is going to get tweaked a lot. It's going to go to 16. No one's going to get a bye. They're going to seed them. The conference championships are going to get a guaranteed spot, but that's it. You can't. I don't even know if you can guarantee them a home game. I was kind of in favor of a home game, not necessarily a bye, but give them a home. I don't even know that anymore. After watching all 4 of them lose in the first game, just rank them 1 through 16. 1 plays 16, just like the NCAA tournament, NCAA basketball tournament, and go about your tournament. I think that's what you do. You don't want the rest. Just play. Unfortunately, kids are going to get hurt. That's football. We're going to find out who the best team is.
Yeah, I'm still in favor of the home games. I almost wish they do home all the way till the championship.
Well, I agree with that, but I'm just saying not a guaranteed. Like, yeah, if you're the 1 seed, you get obviously the round of 16, and then the Elite 8, and then I think the Final 4 should. I think all 3 of those rounds should be at home, and then the national championship you could have wherever.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see. We'll see how they adjust it, but yeah, we know it's going to go to 14 and eventually probably 16 or just straight to 16. So yeah, it'll get tweaked. They've got to get the seating figured out. I think everybody's pretty much on board with those changes. So I'm sure they're going to get those ironed out at least.
It's just how fast, and I don't know what the TV locked in and I know 26 is a year they can change a lot, but I don't know if they can change anything for next year. You would think they could change just the seating, but I don't know.
Yeah, you would think the seating would be a simple fix. I would hope that would be simple enough. Now, as far as home games or bowl locations or locations for the second round and all that, that's probably set. I haven't looked, but I imagine it is because for the TV networks. But yeah, they'll do some tweaking. It's the first year of this expanded thing. We got to go through it at least once or twice to kind of get it to where we all want it.
Yeah, but all the games have been great, and everybody's watching. Heck, 7 million people watched the Iowa State game. That's crazy. Brent Bloom, a Cyclone fanatic, they were talking. They believe with the people in the stands and the people just watching on TV. That's the most people have ever watched an Iowa State football game. That's pretty impressive.
That's good for Iowa State. Good for Miami. It's that bowl game. That was one of the higher end bowl games, of course. The Pop-Tart Bowl. Like you said, they fed in all that. But no, that's college football. When you have this playoff format and you still have some of the bowl games and they do the bowl games right, even those games, people are still going to watch. Everybody's back home with family and friends. They're sitting around. America still wants to watch football.
Yep. Yeah, there's tweaks, and I do think we're on the downhill slide of the opt-outs. 1 or 2 years ago was the most, when like people that were going to get drafted in the 6th and 7th round were sitting. Now you've got, Cam Ward sat for a half, but still he's going to be a top 10 draft pick, and he played. Now there's a lot of argument about, I don't understand the vitriol towards him. And they're all like, he just said he's done at halftime. To think, and I said this yesterday on the podcast, I think, or I hope I did. If I didn't, I missed it. I'm sorry. But if you didn't think the team knew that was happening and there wasn't a plan there, you guys are all nuts. Like, people are talking about, like, well, he just went at halftime, said he's done. No way. That was the plan. The rumor, or things have been said, is he got paid to play an extra half. They paid him a lot of money. They got him a good insurance deal. That was now, do I really think it was a half that he was going to play? I think he was going to play for a while. If things went haywire, and could he have played 1 or 2 series and then been done? I think so. But the way the game was going, he wasn't getting any pressure. He never hardly got touched. There's one time he scrambled. It was right in front of us, and Iowa State guy came running towards him, and he just stepped out of bounds, that's what you should do anyway. But there's no way he was going to take a hit in that game. I think he got hit or tackled once or twice in the whole game. Now, we've all seen it where you just go to cut and your knee buckles and it happens. But he played that game in about as little risk as you can of a football game. And I think it's great for him. It's great for Miami. Now, it was funny, and they were chanting they wanted him at the end of the game. I really would love to know if he wanted back in, and it was just, that was part of the agreement. Like, the insurance was first half only. You cannot play in the second half, or whatever it was. Or if he said he wanted to go in and the coaches said no, or the coaches asked him and he said no. That last drive, I was worried he was going to come back in, and they probably would have went down and kicked a field goal to win it.
Yeah, I think this last drive that gets people, but no, I believe you're right. This was a plan going into the game for him. If he would have just quit at halftime, there'd be teammates and coaches it would have been a scene on the sideline for sure if he would have just quit, per se. So no, this, as you mentioned, this was all part of the plan. The football lovers in us and everybody else, yeah, we would love to see him come in for the final drive, just, one last drive with your teammates. But there's a lot more to it than this. Everybody's an expert with everybody else's money when it's not theirs. If he had money in place and insurance, it is what it is. And again, if this was a playoff game, it's a little bit different.
Oh yeah, a lot different.
This is just an exhibition bowl game, still one of the more fun ones that they have, and one of the better games of the bowl season, honestly. So, no,
Trev, you still there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you cut out a little bit there, but yeah.
Okay.
So, but that's all right. Yeah, just the bowl game's fun, and now we're going right to another bowl game. Ole Miss and Duke are playing right now in Jacksonville. I don't have much to do tonight. I might, after this podcast, I might run to Fairway and get some stuff. I haven't been to the grocery store in a while. I haven't been home. But it was, and I had to scoop some snow. We got a little bit of snow, and 2 days ago I woke up with looking out my window, and the beach was there. So this was depressing in itself, but the reality sets in, and I got to go to work tomorrow. So
yeah, back to the real world, I think, for all of us. So no, the playoffs, some of the games haven't been quite as close as we've all hoped. That's going to happen. I mean, there's NFL playoff games too that sometimes we get blowouts. So it's football. I mean, if you don't come prepared to play in NFL or college, you can get blown out any given Saturday or Sunday or whatever day they got the games on. So, but I think the Final Four, I don't know if you want to do our picks on the games, but I think both games should be close. And I think one's going to be a little higher scoring and one's going to be a little lower scoring.
Yeah, we got 4 of the best teams. Is it the 4 best teams? I don't know, but we got 4 of the best teams in the country. There's no Cinderella left. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if Penn State or Notre Dame wins it, it's a little it's not a Cinderella per se, but
Yeah.
In other years, if they had a loss or two, they wouldn't have been invited.
Right.
So in that sense, I guess maybe it is. But no, this does feel like the four best. Oregon getting bounced like they did is surprising. But other than that, I really don't see too much that's really shocked me, other than Texas almost losing, of course.
Right. None of these teams would have been in if it had been a 4-team this year, would they have? Well, they might have, because Texas might have got in, and Ohio State would have had an argument, don't you think?
Well, yeah, and obviously it would have been Oregon, Georgia.
Right. Those two were in. Boise State's out. So Texas was the next team, right?
Yeah, Texas, and they'd push to get Notre Dame in. Even with the bad loss, they'd push for it.
Yeah, so Notre Dame, but Ohio State would not have been in the 4. Do you think? I don't think they would have, with that loss to Michigan being a bad loss.
Yeah, I'd have to pull up all the rankings, and I'm not sure, but yeah, it's a lot of these teams though. That is the good thing about the playoffs. I listened to some people today say, the make the playoffs. Hell, you can lose 7, 8, 9 games to make the playoffs in the NFL. Right. So we shouldn't ask these kids to go 13-0 just to get in, or 12-1. You should be allowed to slip up or 2 to still make the dance.
Yeah, and with the 2 losses, most teams had 2 losses were definitely in the mix. And it doesn't matter. I don't care if you go to 16, that 17th, 18th team, especially if that 16 team, you're going to get blotted if you go to 16 and then you have to go play. Well, it would have been something. It would have been very similar to Iowa State would have been playing at Oregon. It would have been really close to that this year if you did straight 1 through 16. It would have been Iowa State, I think, ended up 18, but it would have been a team like Iowa State. And I would have not liked that matchup. Now, they played really bad, but I don't think it would have been that bad. 1, Iowa State doesn't have the athletes Ohio State does. And 2, it would have been at Autzen Stadium, and it would have not been near the time off. That game would have happened around my birthday that first weekend, or maybe even the weekend before. It might have just went straight from the conference championship weekend to that next weekend, and you'd have been playing roughly once a week, just like normal football.
Yeah, and I wonder if we're going to get to that once this thing expands a little bit more, where it's just going to be, a 7 to 10 day max, but they're trying to keep it at 7 days or 8 days max, maybe I should say. Yep. And I think we will get to that, but no, the playoffs have been good. I've enjoyed them, even though, every game doesn't go exactly how I want it to. The same thing in the NFL. So we've got 4 teams left. Do you want to make our picks on them?
Yeah, we can go ahead and do that. I'm going to pick, I know I said Texas is the best team left, but I don't trust Quinn Ewers, and Ohio State is playing the best right now. And they're probably just playing the way they should have all year. So I'm going to pick Ohio State to beat Texas. Do you know what the spread of that game is? Did it come out yet? I'm sure 6, it's out.
You cut out a little bit there. Ohio State's favored by 6.5.
I do think they'll cover that. I think Ewers will make a big mistake. Now, I do not think that they're going to go. The only thing that does worry you a little bit about Ohio State is they came out so fast in both games that if Texas would score first or just not let Ohio State jump out to a big lead, Ohio State's not had to play with any urgency or any stress this entire tournament. So that would be one thing that does cause me a little bit of pause on Ohio State. But I do think their talent and I don't like Ryan Day. I don't like Ohio State, but I don't like Texas. I don't like Sarkisian either. So honestly, I wish they would both lose, but it can't happen. So I'm going to pick Ohio State.
Yeah, I thought you'd go with Texas. I'm obviously going with Ohio State too. Yeah. And then, so we both agree on that one. The next one I think is a tougher pick, at least for me. I don't know what you're thinking in that one.
I like Notre Dame. Their defense is a lot better than I thought they were. I think a lot of people, and I didn't watch them very much in the regular season. That is the one thing I've learned going to the Iowa State games, and just, you don't get to see as many games outside of that as if you're sat at home every week. Yes, it's on, and I was a bunch of night games, so they played at noon or whatever. It was on, but you just don't pay attention as much. You're talking to people, or you're just walking around, whatever. You don't watch it, and I'm one of those that, and I know our friends, Zach, they all make fun of me, but I don't sound on my phone when I watch a game. I just watch the game. I don't like to talk a lot. But when you're at an Iowa State game at the camper, you got a couple TVs going, you don't have the sound up. You just don't pay much attention to the games. You don't watch it. With them losing Northern Illinois, I just kind of shrugged them off, and they're not that good. Their schedule was pretty easy. But watching them today and watching them against Indiana, knowing Indiana's offense and what they did to them, their defense is really, really good. I'm going to pick Notre Dame. Yeah, I was really impressed by them.
Yeah, this one's really tough for me. And my recency bias, I want to pick Notre Dame because I like the coach better. They definitely have NFL bodies. I think Penn State's got more NFL guys. And I almost wonder if this is James Franklin's, if he can get this, he's going to buy himself a lot more years at Penn State.
Yeah, he'll be able to stay there until he won, if he would win this game.
And I'm going to go with, even though I want to pick Notre Dame, I am going to go with the all Big Ten matchup because that's just going to be, it would just be, I don't know. Everybody thought it would be SEC, like we've seen before, where all SEC national championship. And instead, the opposite happens in the first year of the expanded playoff. All of a sudden, it's an all Big Ten national championship, which will just tick all the SEC fans off. So
yeah, and I would much rather have the Big Ten there. I hate both of them, but I hate the Big Ten less because the Big Ten isn't owned by the ESPN like the SEC is. So it's going to, and Notre Dame will be, whoever, as long as Ohio State beats Texas, ESPN's not going to know what to do with themselves because obviously Notre Dame is an NBC property and then the Big Ten is a Fox property. So it'll be really hard for them to talk about. They won't be able to have the ESPN SEC bias if those teams are out. It's going to be all about Texas this week on ESPN. Get ready for it.
Yeah, it certainly will. And then I think, if it happens to be Ohio State versus Notre Dame, the rating's going to be high no matter what. But those are probably the two biggest. We've talked about it before. Notre Dame's got the most sidewalk fans. Ohio State might just have the most alumni fans. Regardless, I think it'll probably be the highest rated national championship in history. But that Ohio State Notre Dame one would be pretty wild.
Yeah, Ohio State Notre Dame. And I think you could make an argument that the Texas Notre Dame might even be more people because Texas is nuts too. And does Texas have more fans than Ohio State maybe?
I don't know if they do, but one thing I do know is I'm sure the networks are rooting for Notre Dame regardless. Get Notre Dame in, and then
but Penn State is no slouch either. They fill up 100,000 seat stadium every week too.
No, I think no matter what though, the networks are going to be happy.
They're not sad at all at who's playing. They'd have been really mad if Boise State and Arizona State would have won though.
Yeah, that would have threw some wrenches in things. So with the typical teams, we kind of know that, but it is sort of the same thing in the NFL. We know the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Ravens will probably be there at the end, and then the NFC, we kind of know Eagles, Lions, Vikings. Maybe Rams. You kind of have an idea of a few teams that get into the playoffs in the NFL that they're a year too early or they really don't have a chance. And kind of the same thing with the college football playoffs. So I'm not as upset as some people seem to be with it.
Yeah, it's just, it's fun. This is the first year. It's going to get tweaked. Anybody that thought that it would go smooth and everything was going to work perfectly this is the first time we've ever done this. And ESPN has done a pretty good job of saying that, we've never done this before. It's not perfect. And then they threw this whole wrench into it and talked about with the terrorist attack and having to delay this game. I was a little disappointed in ESPN, and I don't know if it's contract stuff but I'm surprised, even if they just all zoomed in, that they didn't have like game day at from 2 to like 2:45 to talk about this game. Now the problem is I know the McAfee show is going on at that time. But I'm surprised that like Herb Street and Desmond and Reese Davis didn't sit around and talk a little bit about the game. They had just like their regular college football line people on. I was disappointed in ESPN in that. And I don't know if it was a contract thing. I understand McAfee a little bit just because I know he had his radio show that I was watching it a little bit today. And but I was surprised they didn't have Reese Davis with some people.
Yeah, I would sure it's contract. I'm sure those guys that did the college football preview today, I'm sure they're under contract. Like that's their time. They have to have it. But I'm guessing if they asked McAfee though, hey, would you and your boys be willing to do this? I'm sure he would oblige. No problem. He's pretty open-minded to that stuff. So I'd have tracks given that would be my guess anyway.
Right. I understand that Herb Street and Desmond Howard and Reese Davis weren't supposed to work today. I mean, I get it. They had long days yesterday. They all flew home late last night after the Rose Bowl. And I get that, but I'm just surprised just because, yes, it's their job. Yes, they get paid, but they are college football fans and they understand what happened was out of their control. And they still want to talk about that game. And they weren't able to talk about that game as much as they could have. They did. They previewed it because for a lot of game day yesterday, they didn't know if it was going to get postponed. They did before it was over, but they talked about it a little bit before they knew it was getting postponed.
Yeah, it was just a tough situation all around. I mean, yeah, they didn't know if that game was going to get played or not. And, you see a lot of people upset that they pushed it back. I mean, they kind of had to. There's so much going on down there. You don't know if there's other terrorists in the area. You don't know what's safe, what's not. Plus you got 15 dead people and like 30 plus injured. And that's on top of just
right. I think the biggest thing is just,
and now you're looking for terrorists and stuff. So I had no problem with them pushing the game to the next day.
The police force that is required just to have a game, just normal. And obviously today they had way more than normal, but just a normal police force for a game like that. They couldn't ask those people to do that because they were focused on way more important things. That's why they had to postpone the game. It wasn't. They talked about it yesterday. They swept the Superdome twice. It was all clear. I don't think they really thought there was danger. Yes, they could have played it. Yes, it was just they didn't have the manpower to do everything. They couldn't have the game and do the investigation and support that at the same time. No one has enough manpower to do that.
No, not in that short of time. So
right.
Yeah, it's obviously disappointing, saddening. Those words don't even do it justice because those people are just. I've been to New Orleans. The streets they're crowded. They're not very wide, and I was just thinking, I'm in big cities all the time, or even just rural areas when I'm out walking around, and I'm always kind of thinking about traffic, but not 24/7, and you never know when someone could just turn a vehicle, and there's not much you can do. Yeah,
it's crazy, and just I don't know. I don't know what goes on in people's heads, and I guess that's the problem is we don't know what goes on in everybody's heads, and I think even sometimes I believe the people don't know what's going on in their heads, and that's the mental illness part of it, and they can't control it, and they don't know what to do, and it's sad. It's just sad. There's no other word for that. I don't think. It's just in every aspect, it's sad.
Yeah, and it makes myself included. I'm kind of always weary when I go out into big public places for concerts, sporting events, whatever it might be, because you kind of have to be nowadays. We kind of have to be aware of it, even though we don't want to be. Just you're looking at people, you're wondering, hey, that person looks a little sketchy. Other things going on. Now, obviously, this person was in a vehicle, so that's different. You can't tell what they're doing. But I think we've all been in situations where Heck, I was in Walgreens a couple weeks ago, and a sketchy guy walked in, and he had a hoodie on and a backpack, and he had a knife and a sleeve on his hip, and it wasn't a little pocket knife either. Now nothing happened.
Crocodile Dundee knife.
Yeah, kind of. And I'm standing there in line. I'm thinking, is something about to happen here? I mean, you never know. Right. So nothing did, but it definitely went through my mind, and I'm just keeping an eye on him my whole time when I'm standing in line. I mean, don't mean to laugh about it, but I think we've all had situations where you see something or someone, and it just kind of the first thing that goes through your head.
Right. It's society's nuts, and it's crazy out there. And like you said, but the biggest thing is be vigilant and just try to be aware of your surroundings and try to make the best choices you can. You can't stop everything, but do your best to pay attention.
Yeah, and hopefully this stuff can get calmed down. But we've got 2 big games left in college, plus national championship, so 3 total. I think these Final Four should be some really good games, though.
Yep. It's like we talked about. It's 4 of the best teams. Like you said, I do think the Notre Dame Penn State game will be lower scoring, more of what I would classify Big Ten game. Which Notre Dame's not in the Big Ten, but they're built like a Big Ten team. Cold weather, big guys, and then you got Texas and Ohio State. And Ohio State is a Big Ten team, but they build themselves a little bit more like an SEC team. They got athletes everywhere, plus big guys, but their offensive line is very hurt right now. They're not playing their best guys, but they're showing how good they are with depth. But guys that, if they had their number 2, I think they're down 2 number 1 linemen, they'd be even better. And then obviously Texas is a Big 12 first-year SEC team, but Sarkisian was building them to be ready to go to the SEC the moment they got there. And getting to the Final Four last year and then the Final Four this year is proven Texas is probably in fact back, unlike they said a few years ago. But I do think they're not going to fall very far as long as he's the coach there, with them being the SEC now, I don't think.
No, this isn't the Sam Ellinger saying we're back type. Sarkisian, he's going to recruit really well. They've got money to spend, maybe more than anyone out there. Them and Ohio State do. So I expect them to always be in the Elite 8, Final Four, or further, basically every year as long as Sark is there.
Yep, and that's the thing you never know is, as long as they have a good quarterback and their head coach, it can go a long ways. But Sark's been in the NFL with the Falcons. Sometimes those guys just get the itch to go do something different, because when you move up like they all have, you have to move around a lot, or you do. And, he's been a head coach at Washington, at USC. He's been a head coach at big time programs. He's been no coordinator at, Alabama. And then obviously went to the Falcons for a year or whatever, and then came back to Alabama and then to Texas. So he never stays anywhere very long. And now Texas is a place that you think you're going to stay, but those guys get itchy fingers. I do think some people do. And DeBoer is going to have more this year, but if next year would go the same way or very similar, that job's going to open up. And then I do think more people will be interested in that job, because now you're not following the man. I think Sark would be more interested in the Alabama job now, because I've been told many times that Alabama is the best job in the country. They've got as much resources as anybody. Now, from the people that told me that and the time that was, college football's changed. So maybe Alabama isn't the best place now. Maybe it is in Ohio State. It is at Texas, because there is more money there. But Alabama's never lacked for resources from football. But paying players and things like that may become more of an issue than it's been in the past.
Yeah, I think it'd be tough for him to leave Texas on his own, given their money. They've got that oil money down there, so that's going to be tough. Alabama, that state, just they flat out don't have it. But the infrastructure and the facilities and everything is built up there at Alabama. So no, I think he'll be there for a long time. But yeah, if he has a couple down seasons, 4 or 5 years, then obviously the pressure is going to get on.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. College football is awesome. It's my favorite sport. Well, now maybe we can transition into your favorite, the NFL. It's week 18, but game 17, right?
Yeah, week 18, game 17 for all the teams. There's really only just a few topics. Obviously, the NFC's only got one playoff spot left. If the Bucks win, they're in. Otherwise, the Falcons can still win that division. So that's it for the AFC. The Broncos are in now, control their own destiny, but the Bengals and Dolphins are still alive. And then really probably the biggest story, though, is we've got 2-14-2 teams going up against each other, and which arguably the biggest regular season game in history between these two teams, given the record. And one team's going to get the bye, the only bye now, and the other team's going to go down to the 5. So,
yeah, and that's crazy. They're going to probably, go to Atlanta or go to Tampa, right? And that's
and it's just, it's crazy that a team could finish 14-3 and have to be on the road maybe the entire time. So there's a lot on the line. A lot of people love the Vikings. I hear the wise guys are on the Lions. I'm going to ride and die with the Lions until I really see them fall off a map. They're starting to get a little bit healthier, which is good. And, we've been hearing about these injuries for about 8 to 10 weeks for the Lions, but they keep winning.
right. Yeah, and it's in Detroit, right?
It is in Detroit, yep.
So that does give them an advantage. I do think I would give my nod to the Lions, but Sam Darnold just is he's earning himself a lot of money, number one. Number two, he just seems to make plays, and we've talked about this before. People do forget that he was drafted 2 or 3, right? So people thought he was really good at football.
Yeah.
And in fact, he is really good at football. He just was in super bad organizations, and the Jets and the Panthers. And then he goes to San Francisco and learns how to be a pro and probably a little bit how to be a quarterback. And now this year with O'Connell, who is a quarterback guy, is learning how to play quarterback. And that's where Williams with the Bears, as they've got to figure this out with him, because I don't think right now he's learning how to be a pro and how to be a quarterback because the organization is in such dysfunction. And that's why a guy like Brock Purdy can be so successful is he's learning how to be a pro and learning how to be a quarterback. And it's just because that organization gets it, and then some organizations don't.
Yeah, I completely agree. Look, Geno is starting to flutter a little bit, but he had a resurgence to his career. Baker's tearing it up in Tampa. Obviously, Sam Darnold this year with the Vikings. The first half of the season, I thought it's kind of a fluke. And more time goes on, I'm like, well, no, it's this. He's got talent. I mean, he's big, strong.
Yep.
He's a really good athlete. He's got a hell of an arm. He was just in some bad situations. So, for the Vikings, I think regardless, they've got to at least franchise tag him after the season and try to keep him for at least one more year. I wouldn't let him walk out the door.
That's the $40 to $60 million question. I believe the franchise tag is $40-some million.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I agree with you. I think you have to at least do that. I think that's probably all you want to do. You don't want to pay him any more than that. You want to pay him as least amount as you can. He's getting paid $10 million this year. You still have J.J. McCarthy, who I don't remember exactly what he hurt, his knee, whatever. I don't know if he's going to be back ready to go at the start of next year, or if it's one of those he'll be ready sometime next year. Or do you, and again, you hear it, that they love Daniel Jones. People forget that Daniel Jones is in that quarterback room. If you think you can do what you did with Sam Darnold to Daniel Jones, do you let Darnold walk and you're paying Daniel Jones 10, 15, $20 million, and then you're paying McCarthy $10 to $15 million as a rookie still, whatever. let him walk and let him go sign the big deal and let someone else be salary cap hurt with the quarterback, and you with the Vikings still aren't, and you can go add linemen and receivers and running backs and defensive players.
Well, if I'm the GM,
That's the chess match of an NFL team, is how much you spend on the quarterback, because you got to have one, but you got to have the rest of a team too.
if I'm the GM of the Vikings or decision maker, first and foremost, I'm not letting Sam Darnold leave. And if it's a franchise tag, he won't like that, but too bad. That's how the NFL works.
Right.
As far as McCarthy and Daniel Jones, I'm fine with keeping both of them for another year. You keep all three. And yeah, it's a lot of money at the quarterback position, but that way you've got insurances. If Sam Darnold balls out, okay, then we give him a 3 or 4 year extension and then look to trade McCarthy, maybe keep Daniel Jones as a backup in an ideal world or something like that. But ideally, I'd keep all three. I mean, and I think Sam Darnold would be kind of foolish to leave to go to Tennessee or the Raiders or something. I think he's in a really good situation with a good coach, good weapons. So if I'm him, I think I'd want to stay. And, you know, the problem, one of the problems is the Vikings, they don't have a ton of draft picks this year. They've got their first, but I don't think they have a second, third, or they may not even have a fourth. So they're a little depleted of draft picks. There's some people wondering if they could trade McCarthy for at least one more year. Season wasn't a fluke by any means.
Right. Yeah. And the 49ers are in the same. Now, am I wrong in thinking that they don't have to pay Purdy for one more year? They get one more year with him?
Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody's going nuts about it. I was like, I think they can go one more year without paying him.
Yeah, and that's what they should do. I mean, Purdy's not
I agree.
Like it,
I mean,
but can he really afford to sit out and lose, you know,
right,
his small paycheck to begin with?
He's got to play.
He's got to play. And this season, and two things are working against him. One, he's regressed, and two, he may have hurt his arm and elbow and nerve damage again. So that is a problem. And if he was to say, I'm sitting out, what's to say that Shanahan couldn't talk Sam into coming back?
Right. And or I would assume there's some relationship there that, or they go get Daniel Jones, and hey, O'Connell, teach him, hurry, fast, but yeah, just because that'd put him in a much better situation too. And you got to think 49ers aren't going to be as hurt next year, just law of averages. They were pretty healthy for a few years there, which is why they went to the championship game and the Super Bowl. This year, everybody got hurt. So next year it's going to regress a little bit back to the mean, you would think. So not everybody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, no, they should be a little bit healthier next year. They need to build up the trenches a little bit, especially on the O-line. They've got enough skill position people, in my opinion, for next season. They're going to have to make some decisions on a few players, but maybe not a lot yet. Like I said, if they don't sign Purdy to a big deal, which I don't think they should, then they're still going to be okay next year. But yeah, Purdy, he's got to play. He's got to go prove it. And if he goes out next year and has a good year and the team makes the playoffs, they will probably give him a 3 or 4 year good deal after that.
And then they should. I mean, he's probably went from $60 million a year to $40 million a year this year, don't you think? If you had to sign him.
That's what my gut tells me. But, the NFL, it's always about the next guy up. But his situation is so much different. I don't know what to think. But if I was a GM, John Lynch, no, I'd make him play out the final year. I mean, I know it sucks, but we got to see more. He was the last pick. He's not the biggest guy by any means. I still think he's a quality starter. The writing's kind of on the wall for him. He may just be a journeyman type guy after that.
Yeah. Still not a bad life. But
no, certainly not. But yeah, he can't afford to sit out. He's not making that much money to begin with. So he can't be giving up those paychecks each week.
No, he's going to be pissed, and he should be pissed. I'd be pissed too. And if you're John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, you're probably pissed. You're making him do it too, just in general, because obviously John Lynch played for a long time. Shanahan, did he ever play in the league? Or
he played in college. I don't think he played in the NFL, though. I don't think he ever made it.
But he's an NFL lifer with his dad, and I mean, So, I mean, he understands the business of it, and he understands those guys love seeing guys get paid too. One, it's not their money that's paying them, and it's just that's what that life is all about. Everybody wants the big contract. If you get one as a quarterback, if you can get one big contract, you're set. Now, most people need that second contract to make that big one, but quarterbacks are just a different animal right now.
Yeah, no, and by all accounts, he's a great teammate and a good locker room guy. He's not a distraction, so I'm sure they love him, but they got to protect themselves too. You don't want to give him a Daniel Jones deal, and then all of a sudden he's gone a year later.
Right. Yeah, Cousins going to get cut. Daniel Jones is going to did get cut. They're getting paid a lot, but that teams don't want you.
Yeah, so I think I've been waiting for an NFL team to put the brakes on a quarterback extension or deal, and this one may just work out because of the season, because of him being the last pick of the draft when he was, and this may be the right time to just wait and let it play out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame the 49ers there. Any other free agent? What do you think about the Eagles sitting Saquon? I think you have to sit him, but it sucks.
Yeah, it sucks for him in the O-line, but they're sitting a couple of O-linemen too, some older guys, especially Lane Johnson. He even said, he was like, yeah, I'll take a week off. That's not going to bother me too much. I don't know. The Eagles are the Eagles. They're going to do what they want to do. We'll see if they come out rusty, in the first playoff game, because they are locked up for the number 2 seed, and they happen to lose. Of course, Sirianni's going to get scrutinized, but I think with a running back and an older ball now, the Lions kind of went the opposite way when they played the 49ers.
Right.
But that's the culture that Dan Campbell's built. That kind of goes back to one thing I think we talked about at one time, but a couple years ago when the Lions played in Green Bay and they needed some stuff to happen earlier in the day, it didn't. So the game was meaningless. And the Lions went out and beat Aaron Rodgers' his final game as a Packer. And Dan Campbell said, hey, this organization just needs to learn how to win games.
Yep.
That's the only way to fix this thing. It's not playing for a better draft pick like some of us online like to do sometimes. I'm guilty of it. You need to lose to get a better draft pick. No, the Lions needed to win. The Eagles have been successful for quite a while.
Right.
Most of our lives. So every situation is different. Every team's different. I think it's the right call, though.
Yeah, I do too. I was listening to Herm Edwards talk that, and maybe it was somebody else, but you can only sit 6 guys. Everybody's talking about all the guys because you have you could only bring up 6 guys from like a practice squad to play.
Inactives, yep.
And if you do more than that, you have to cut some guys, and then that doesn't work either. So it's not like you can rest everybody. You do have to pick and choose who you rest. And obviously it's the big name quarterback, running back, receivers, big time linemen that are sitting. But the NFL is just so different than college with the lack of numbers. There's only 53 guys standing on the sideline on a given active guys standing on the sideline of an NFL team. And you got 11 on the field at a time. So you got 39 guys or whatever. That's really bad math, but it's 42 guys standing on the sideline, and you guys have to play. It's just the reality of the NFL.
Yeah, some starters do have to play. Your most important positions or your older legends, if they do sit, I think most guys on a team understand it. Hey, that guy's been here for 12 years. Right. Like, he's going to sit. That's just the way it is. But yeah, I mean, if you only dress 9 offensive linemen normally and you sit out 2 of them for rest, well, now you're down to 7. And right. If a guy gets hurt, well, now you're down to 6.
Right? Yeah,
it goes pretty quickly, like you said with the roster construction. I think that's why they need to increase roster size during the next CBA, and I'm pretty sure they will, because that'll be one of the things that the players argue for, since they're going to have to play that extra 18th game, which is coming up.
So are they going to go 20 weeks, 18 games, regular season, and just essentially end the preseason?
They'll probably have one preseason game maybe, but my guess is what they're going to do is increase roster sizes, go to 20 weeks, and then 2 buys. for
Yep.
each team.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If you're going to play 18 games, you got to have 2 buys. And that's the one thing that the Lions, we talk about them being so hurt. They had the earliest bye you could. They had week 5 bye. So they've been playing for 11 straight weeks. That's hard.
That is hard. And there's a lot of people that weren't happy with them play their starters. I personally, the defense I understand, because a lot of those defensive guys are young or they've just signed. Like, those guys need the reps. Often St. Brown, some of those guys when they were playing that game against the Niners. But that's Dan Campbell. But you didn't hear any Lions player complain about it. They've just bought in, and so. I mean, it's risky. There's no doubt about it. But they came out unscathed for the most part. So it worked, and we'll see what happens in the final week here versus the Vikings.
Yeah, and understand they could have lost that game, and then this one still would have just been the same. But you still have to play it, and that's what makes football better than basketball or baseball, where you just take days off. You don't just take days off in football. You don't. Now, there's some strategy take days off, like, Patrick Mahomes isn't playing Sunday or Monday, whatever they play. But that's a strategy. He's not just load management. I mean, it really is load management. I mean, that it is what they're doing, but everybody understands it. But on a regular game that matters, which every game in the NFL matters, and and I hate, baseball's the worst because it's 162 games and they say every game doesn't matter. But how many races come down to 1 or 2 games at the end? So every game did matter. And when you sat that game in May 2nd and your team lost and you could have helped that team, that's a game. That drives me nuts. And then basketball is the same way. You miss out on the playoffs by 2 games, but you sat for a weekend road trip. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, no, I get it. That we've talked about before here, especially lately, basketball and baseball got so many games that early in the season, no one really pays attention as much just because there's so many games. Football, you have to, because it's one a week essentially. And yeah, for guys like Mahomes, I mean, if this was a game they needed, he'd be out there playing. We know that. And when you've got players like Mahomes or veterans around the league that are seasoned in the playoffs, and they can turn it on, they're not going to have the rust. Then you go ahead and do it. And I think that's one thing that Dan Campbell's doing is let's just keep the momentum going into the playoffs. And like the first thing we talked about when we first got started tonight was some of the college teams with the buys looked flat, and they're a lot younger. They don't have the experience. So it's every situation is different for every NFL team, I think. And, I think the Eagles made the right call, and, it's hindsight, but I do think the Lions made the right call against the Niners as well.
Right. I do as well. And every, Dan Campbell's different than Nick Sirianni. The Eagles are different than the Lions, different than the Chiefs, different than the Rams. I mean, every situation is different. And we don't know. Every single NFL player is not healthy right now. But how healthy? Are you 80%? Are you 75%? Are you 65%? That determines it as well. And that's what we don't know. They're out there playing every snap, but he's only 75%. And you'd be amazed. And the NFL, you hear about it more, but you'd be amazed the amount of college players that have surgery that you never even knew were hurt. I remember just when I was part of Iowa State, a couple guys played every game, never realized they were hurt. Then we'd get back for winter conditioning on January 20th, and they'd be in an arms league. Well, they had to get their shoulder cleaned up. I mean, it's insane. I mean, it's, they're playing injured, and that's what's crazy, and how football, they're so tough. They're so tough.
Yeah, and that's the best thing. I think that's why America loves football so much is you got to play. You're kind of expected to play, and guys will hide injuries if they can, of course, or they'll just play through them. So there's a fine line, but it's definitely a lot different than some of the other sports.
Anything else you want to talk about, Trev? I know it's been a couple weeks for you on here. And again, we want to thank Doug for filling in there on Christmas Eve. And then, I went last night. So we were on Steve Shetler today at 7, about right when we started here, which is why we did that. And then this one will just be a kind of a bonus episode, but that's more of our regular normal talk of football. Anything else you want to talk about, Trev?
Nope. Just was good to be back and see everybody, family and friends, spend some time doing all that good stuff. And hopefully everybody else got to do the same. Football season's coming to an end, so we got to enjoy it while we still got it, because then it's then we're going to be talking March Madness, free agency, NFL draft, the Masters, WNBA season. But
yeah, I mean it's crazy, but Iowa State football we're not going to see for 8 months. It sucks.
Yeah, that's right. It goes by quick though.
Yeah, it does. It's as I talked about, the days go slow, but the years go fast. And yeah, not that long ago we were at Hinterland first couple days of October or of August, and now we're all the way second day here in January. And I drove through Hinterland the other day. I was headed to Bethany, Missouri to trade the kids with my ex-wife there, and I'm like, I'm just going to drive, and they are working on it, and they are moving. It is getting moved over to kind of in behind where we parked that first year.
Yeah, I see there's some major changes coming to that, so interested to see what the lineup's going to be.
Yep, that's what I'm not.
How it all works next year, if it's smooth, if there's bumps, I'm sure there will be, but
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, that's what it's fun. And it's like last year was one of those. I had no idea who Chapel Roan was. I didn't know who she was until she came on. But it was an awesome show. So it's one of those, you just buy it even if you don't know everybody, and you just go and you just experience it, or you wait and see who the lineup is and you just go and you decide to go or not go just because on who you know. But we'll see.
Yeah. Sometimes it's fun to just go to those, even if you don't know most of the bands or any. Just as I'm looking forward to seeing who they got this year.
Yep. All right. Thanks a lot, Trev, and we'll be back normal next week. Tuesday, Wednesdays. We'll go from there. I am going to the Iowa State Baylor game, so that'll be fun on Saturday. Top 25 matchup. Second game this year, seeing Iowa State, and then I'm also going to go to the Iowa State Kansas game at Hilton this year as well. So, going to see some good. Obviously, Iowa State's really good, and then see a couple other top 25 teams as well. So it'll be good.
Yeah, no, you should, especially when they're this good and you got other good teams coming in. You got to take advantage.
Yep, awesome. All right, thanks a lot, Trev, and we'll talk next week.
Have a good one.